Hello and welcome to the Ea Tolkien Society. This is our November 19th, 2022 monthly Tolkien Society meeting. I am here live in the RPG Community Center in East Central Spokane, Washington, and coming to us remotely over our Jitsi RPGSN.net server. We have folks from Central Washington and Idaho as well. Let's go ahead and start with you, Gary.
Yeah, I'm in Mountain Home, Idaho, about 40 miles southeast of Boise, and I've been a member of this August group since, when was it, last year sometime. I also joined the Tolkien Society. So
Wonderful.
I'm really an official member now.
Yoo-hoo! All right. And Chris.
Yes, Chris Cooperstein here, Southeast Washington, out in the South Farthing, the desert, and in the Tri-Cities, and been a member for, I don't know,
Years and
coming up on 10 years.
And I'm Hawk Robinson, founder of Ea Tolkien Society. Moved up here to Spokane from other places, California, Utah, Idaho, Oklahoma, and elsewhere. But moved here in 2004. In 2005, we had our first convention and Tolkien Society meetings, and been meeting ever since. We've been streaming on YouTube almost since then as well. So we have streams of the meetings, including a lot of special guests and published authors. Going back, boy, that's 16 years. And we're an official Smial of the UK Tolkien Society. I mean, an official chapter. Also, we founder of Other Minds magazine, which is for Tolkien scholarly and gaming interests at otherminds.net. Thomas Mowinski is keeping that going, thankfully, out of Germany. We sometimes have people participating from the UK and Italy and elsewhere. But today we're kind of light on the participation. So far, nobody's shown up at the center. Brian had other stuff, who's our secretary. He had a schedule conflict. So it's a little light today. You can get more info about our meetings, our meeting notes, our links to our previous broadcasts, etc., at tolkienscholars.org. So I guess we'll go over last month's October 15th meeting notes that Brian sent. That's on the website. And then after we get through that, we'll jump into our topics of discussion for this month. And we'll also do readings from Tolkien's letters of j.r.r. Tolkien. All right. So, Ea Tolkien Society for October 15th, 2022, meeting notes. Attending at that time, Anthony, Hawk, Corey, Gary, and Brian. Brian read the notes from September. We followed up Tolkien Thinking of Black Speech. So, Morbeth. New business topics. We're talking about the RPG Community Center because finally things were rolling along regularly. This is where we now meet each month. The One Ring role-playing game Strider/solo mode on Twitch channel. So Brian and I did do that. We went through the rules on Twitch some weeks ago, but we did not actually get to playing because it's actually much more involved than we thought. And then we've twice now meant to meet, and then I've had to cancel because of conflicts. But we're trying to get ready in our next session to actually play it and see how that Strider mode works. It's very different than other solo role-playing game approaches. It basically also lets you do a role-playing game without a game master. So normally you have a game master who's kind of the referee and kind of runs things and does all the stuff. This one, everybody, you basically use dice rolls and pick lists to simulate. It's kind of like having an AI game master, except there's no computer.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. It's a very different. Yeah, it's a very different approach to solo play or game masterless play. So we're very intrigued by it. It is creative. We talked about the Fall of Numenor book coming out in November. Has that come out yet? Did it?
Yes, it did, and I don't know how many people can see me holding up my
Yes.
copy,
Yes.
but I haven't had a chance to really start to read it. That'll come later this month, or
Right.
actually next month after I have a serious procedure done
Oh.
up in Boise. But
Oh. Well,
yeah,
all your best wishes.
anyway, it should go well, and it will make a big difference in my life. Anyway, I did look through it though, and this covers all of the Second Age,
Okay.
so it should be interesting.
Well, and I assume it has a lot to do with the corresponding to the Amazon thing coming out and maybe setting the record straight.
Probably.
Yeah. I'm sure it was released, concurrently. Like, that was the reason.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they finally released all. Sorry about that. That's people coming in and out of the center here. I forgot to go mute that. I'll have to go do that. Apologies. Okay. So yeah, it's available in hardcover, softcover, and Kindle, and audiobook, Audible. So interesting. Oh, maybe not softcover, just hardcover. Did you get it in softcover?
No, it's
Okay,
my
yes.
wife
So
ordered it
hardcover,
for me.
audiobook, and Kindle. That's what's available.
Yeah, it's hardcover.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
I'll have to get that.
They release a hardcover.
Right first, and then later the softcover.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. All right. I've got that in my queue to. I forgot to get that ordered. I usually stay on top of that.
Yeah, I'm putting it in my notes now.
Can Gary, since you have a copy, I mean, I could grab it on Kindle, but you have a copy later on before we go. You want to read a little excerpt from it that
Sure,
maybe kind of summarizes what it,
I
some
can-
explanatory
Yeah,
chapter.
like I said, I just basically went through the table of contents.
Yeah, yeah.
And looked
But
at-
maybe in the
looked at
preface or something, just something that explains what it's going to cover and the approach they took.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, they got something about this book. I can read that.
Okay, so have that ready, and we'll go over that in a little bit. I think
All
that'll
right.
be of interest to people. Thank you. All right. Tolkien Moot 19 next summer, third week of July 2023. We discussed that. Rings of Power review. We had a lengthy discussion about that. Brian summarized the good. Hawk, that would be me, said the Harfoot's well done. The casting is good. Halbrand as Sauron, very well portrayed as manipulative. Corey, Adar the Dark Elf was an interesting character. Brian, Dwarves and Khazad-dûm, amazing. Anthony, visualization of Numenor. Gary, background's good, plot improved over the season. The bad, Hawk. Because kinslaying left out, Galadriel and the elves' motivation storyline seems broken. Are any of the writers from NTV Shannara or on Rings of Power? They've got Blight and Mithril and other things that are very much like the MTV Shannara series, which was not good. Way too much time compression. Galadriel standing in the face of a pyroclastic flow, not Superwoman. Belabored the cultist's encounter with the stranger. Corey said, bullying in Amon bothered him. People can't imagine a pure society. The Mithril Tree. Main characters are three women, Galadriel, Miriel, and Nori. I don't remember why that would be a con, but okay. Brian, Mithranium is a weird. It's just how he put it. He put in parentheses, Mithranium, question mark, is a weird. Anthony, weird chemistry with Elrond and Galadriel. Changing some of the fundamentals of the Legendarium. Gary, Elrond, Galadriel. Those were the
I don't
parent.
remember what I said.
Elrond was weird, and Galadriel was weird, and you were pointing out the different issues, and you and I had a lot of
I could believe
conversation.
that. Elrond, I thought.
It's just
versus Peter Jackson movies.
yeah. Well, Hugo Weaving did a I mean, he was Hugo Weaving, but much more could really buy into him being Elrond a lot more than this other fellow.
Yeah.
The hopeful for season 2. Galadriel's character develops more. Numenor line. Hopefully, to hear more to Tolkien's Legendarium. That the music will be more inspirational. More song and music in the show. That's for me. Development over the 4 remaining seasons. We read from Tolkien Letter 208. We had discussion. Okay, it said next time we'll look at ancient sources that influenced j.r.r. Tolkien's writing. Mythology, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, Plato's works, Virgil, Augustine, and the Bible. I think we're going to have to maybe hold off on that till we've got more people. I think that's going to be a more limited conversation with just the 3 of us. I'd really love to have Brian and the others available. So let's maybe talk more around the Numenor book and maybe go around that route. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay. And next meeting, November 19th, 2022. Thank you, Brian, for your notes. We miss you. All right. So that is our meeting notes, and now we're ready to get rolling here. So this is edited by Brian, the Fall of Numenor, edited by Brian Sibley, who is one of the more respected ones, right? I mean, you got others out there that people kind of go, ugh, not very good scholars of Tolkien, but folks feel pretty good about Brian Sibley, right? Yes, no, maybe so. What are your thoughts?
Mark, I have no idea. Maybe Chris.
I haven't heard of him as much.
Okay.
I don't know. I suppose not.
Okay.
So I don't have a comment until I have read his work.
Sure.
I suppose. Just reviewing
the reviews are a bit mixed on Amazon. There's only 22 so far.
Yeah.
And they don't. Okay, so the mixed reviews. Art needs more ink. Okay, that's not incompetent shipping by Amazon. That's not a biggie. For the person who needs every title technically by Tolkien ever released. As previous viewers said, there's nothing new here except for some art. There are also no insightful contributions by the editor. This is in no way a scholarly work. I know a few hundred Tolkien scholars who could have identified appropriate material for a volume dedicated to the Second Age and presented it in chronological order with equal or better competency. Having all the Second Age material in one volume sounded to me like a great idea, but if this is not that and there's no content or value added, what audience does it serve? The existing fans don't need it, and the rest would be better off reading the Silmarillion Unfinished Tales. You know, if you're going to scrape the bottom of Tolkien's desk drawers 50 years after his death for content and the expectation of selling books, yep, I really did just say that, please come with anything new that is not art. In fact, stop hiring Alan Lee because it's hard to watch such a huge talent used as a tool, said that too. Tolkien has too many fans paying close attention to call this anything but another instant bestseller. I'm not sending mine back only because I just don't do that with Tolkien titles in their first printing, but I can't recommend it. That was from somebody going by the name Haleth. And that's Haleth, yeah, Haleth. That's the name they went under. They only gave it 2 stars. So, interesting. I'll be curious to see if you feel the same way or if there's anything new in it or not. That is a shame if they just rehashed rather than some tidbits found and such. That would be a bummer if there's nothing new in there. Do you have? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Chris.
I think that I'm starting to get into the meat of the Christopher Tolkien compendium. I'm on volume 2, and if it's just retelling.
Well, retelling wouldn't be so bad. I mean, like the Children of Hurin was a retelling, and that was nicely put together in a novel form. So even though it was the same content, it was put together in a more readable way. If it was great.
Hope one would hope that that is
Yeah, but
what
it
is done
sounds
here.
like it may not be.
But if it's just taking the source work and reorganizing it,
Yeah.
that is undergraduate work.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Well, why don't I
If that's the case.
why don't I read a little bit from the table of
Please,
contents?
please.
See that, well, the thing I like about it, and again, I have not read the book itself,
Right.
but it has second age year, and it has year one, which is they have the foundation of the Grey Havens and of Linden. And then year 32, the Edan reach Numenor, and they go into the geography, the natural life, and the life of natural life of Numenor and the life of the Numenorians.
Mm-hmm.
And 40 many dwarves leaving their old cities in Edred Luin, the Blue Mountains, going to Moria and swell it in numbers. Okay, so that goes right there, and I'm skipping around like. In circa 10,000 or circa 1,000 of the Second Age, Sauron is alarmed by the growing power of the Númenóreans, chooses Mordor as a land to make it into a stronghold. He begins the building of Barad-dûr. I mean, we kind of knew that anyway, but still, I don't think it hurts to, because that was a big event in the Second Age. 1701, Sauron is driven out of Eredor. The Westlands have peace for a long while. And in 3262, Sauron is taken prisoner to Numenor.
Mm-hmm.
3262 to 3310, Sauron seduces the king and corrupts the Númenóreans. 3310, Pharazôn begins the building of the Great Armament. 3319, Pharazôn assails Valinor. And Elendil had a downfall of Numenor, which is what this is all about, by a big wave.
Yep.
And Elendil and his sons escape. And it goes all the way over here.
Right. Is there in the inlet cover or something? Is there a narrative summary of what the book is about and the approach that they took from the author, or about the book section?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
And it says about, well, how about this passage called about this book?
There you go. Well, that sounds like a
Okay.
plan, Stan.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that the last thing they show is Sauron overthrown, and during the battle outside in Mordor, okay? And about this book, The Fall of Numenor seeks to present in a single volume selections from j.r.r. Tolkien's posthumously published writings about the Second Age of Middle-earth. This book would not have been possible without the extraordinary literary achievements of Christopher Tolkien, who introduced readers of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to the rich legacy of myth and history from both the Elders and the Second Age. Okay, and then it goes into his achievement there. The intention is not to supplant these works, as each already stands as a definitive presentation of Tolkien's writings with peerless, insightful commentary and analysis by Christopher Tolkien, but rather to provide extracts from the above with as few editorial inventions as possible that illustrate the author's own words, the rich and tumultuous events of the Second Age, as summarized by Tolkien in The Tale of Years. And then it has in parents chronology of the Westlands that appears as part Appendix B in The Lord of the Rings. So that's how it starts out.
Okay.
What they're trying to do. Okay. Um, those wishing to delve deeper into its history, the notes provided at the end of the book, many of which draw upon Christopher Tolkien's own invaluable editorial expertise. I reproduce any quoting from his own notes to the original published sources will aid their explorations as they seek to discover more about the Second Age and Middle-earth. Page references relate to, in all cases, to the first edition of that work. Okay. The selected passages and extracts are arranged in the following chronological year.
Yeah, we don't need to go over that. Does it give any insight into how any of this, like, that really doesn't say much other than that he just kind of compiled it?
Yeah.
Is there anything listing like
It goes into
a new
genealogy and looks like kind of being very careful.
Well, let me read from
Tolkien. And okay, the volume adheres to the principle established by Christopher Tolkien that the published texts are treated as being the final versions, and in instances where material is included from earlier drafts, such variations are amended. Okay.
All right, here's what the Amazon description says, just to see if it, because it's a little more summary based. J.r.r. Tolkien's writings on the Second Age of Middle-earth, collected for the first time in one volume, complete with new illustrations in watercolor and pencil by renowned artist Alan Lee. J.r.r. Tolkien famously described the Second Age of Middle-earth as a, quote, dark age, and not very much of its history is or need to be told, end quote. And for many years, readers would need to be content with the tantalizing glimpses of it found within the pages of The Lord of the Rings and its appendices, including the forging of the Rings of Power, the building of the Barad-dûr and the Barad-dûr? Is that?
Barad-dûr is
well, I know, but it says the building of the Barad-dûr and the rise of Sauron. I don't know if the article should be there or not. It was not until Christopher Tolkien published the Silmarillion after his father's death that a fuller story could be told. Who wrote this? Although much of the book's content concerned the first age of Middle-earth, there were at its close two key works that revealed the tumultuous events concerning the rise and fall of the island of Númenor. Raised out of the great sea and gifted to the men of Middle-earth as a reward for aiding the angelic Valar and the elves in the defeat and capture of the Dark Lord Morgoth, the kingdom became a seat of influence and wealth. But as the Númenóreans' power increased, the seed of their downfall would inevitably be sown, culminating in the last alliance of elves and men. Even greater insight into the Second Age would be revealed in subsequent publications, first in Unfinished Tales of Númenor and Middle-earth, then expanded upon in Christopher Tolkien's magisterial 12-volume The History of Middle-earth, in which he presented and discussed a wealth of further tales written by his father, many in draft form. Now, adhering to the timeline of the Tale of Years and the appendices to The Lord of the Rings, editor Brian Sibley has assembled into one comprehensive volume a new chronicle of the Second Age of Middle-earth, told substantially in the words of Tolkien from the various published texts, with new illustrations in watercolor and pencil by the doyen of Tolkien art, Alan Lee. So, I guess the main thing is, as he says, as the cover about the book says, it has a lot less of the editorial comments that, like, the History of Middle-earth and everything is full of Christopher Tolkien commentary, right? You'll read a paragraph and then it'll be 2 pages of commentary. Then you'll read a paragraph from Tolkien and then it'll be 5 pages of commentary from Christopher, right? And so is looking through it looks like maybe it's just a lot more just Tolkien's content and a lot less of the editorial interjections. Is that what it is? So it's a little bit easier to read through.
That's what the introduction or
yeah. If you thumb through it, does it look like that? Does it look significantly lighter on the editorial?
Yeah, it does actually.
Okay. So that might at least make it a little easier to read.
Yeah, for instance, here's one. Galadriel became aware that Sauron again, as in the ancient days of the captivity of Melkor,
yeah,
been left behind.
This has got to be in response to the Amazon version of this time period, so that you have an easier way to go. Now, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. What's going on here?
And then the next paragraph, it's Celeborn and Galadriel therefore went eastwards
Okay.
about the year 700 of, and
Okay.
it's narrative.
All right.
But so it was a similarian for all practical purposes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. I guess it's more than Silmarillion because it includes the content from the other books that weren't fully available during the Silmarillion. So, but yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know. We'll have to see that.
It'll be interesting to see if it, kind of brings out and makes the second age for a lot of people more interesting.
A new generation, yeah, make it more approachable. Yeah. Maybe we can hope. Okay. Here in the ads on Amazon, it's How to Misunderstand Tolkien by Bruno Bocelli. Yeah, I know a lot of people do that. That's funny.
Well,
okay.
It's an interesting thing, and I if I could interject something.
Please.
When I see, for instance, a movie and the critics like Rotten Tomatoes, and the critics hate it.
Yes.
But the people like it.
Yeah.
That's to me a good indication I'm gonna like it.
Yeah.
Critics, that's.
Yeah, they often go against what is actually enjoyable.
Yeah, usually.
It's because they watch movies professionally. They get bored with the same old, and so just because it is a formula doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. Supernatural, the series was highly formulaic, but it had a 15-year run. It was a formula that worked, right? They did very well for a very long time. That a lot of people enjoyed. It wouldn't get critical acclaim, but it was fun. You wanted a fun show, and it was an enjoyable, fun show. I'm not necessarily saying I personally recommend Supernatural. I'm just, for example. Depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something different, then there's a lot of those art house things. That's what the critics always seem to want to. They'll give really high ratings to the really art house stuff and lousy ratings to the.
That leaves me cold. So.
What's that?
I said that just leaves me cold. What they pretend to like because
they're because they do it all day long. Yeah, they get too jaded.
Elitist arrogance.
Well, they get jaded. I mean, if it's what you did all day long, you'd want something to break up from the same old rigmarole. What are the topics before we jump into the letters? There's a pretty long letter coming up for 209. Are there topics you'd like to discuss today?
I've got two.
Great.
Or three.
And of course, anybody watching or listening, feel free to post your questions and comments, and we'll gladly involve you in the conversation.
Sure. I guess I'd start with saying I did finally finish season 1.
Okay.
And, so my reaction was I am glad they brought some closure as to who was Sauron,
right,
and who was
I'm Sauron. No, I'm Sauron. I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus.
So that's it's good to end the season.
Yeah, who was Gandalf? Who was Sauron? All of that. Yeah.
It would be a bit odd to not. And they did a good job there.
Okay.
The concept of a Harfoot going and leaving everything that she knows, going off with a wizard.
Rather tookish, I think.
Yes. And aren't there some tooks in that, or proto-tooks in that group there?
Indeed.
So that, overall, I'm still going to maintain my 7 rating on.
Really?
A scale of
still that high? Wow. Okay.
In terms of the enjoyment factor and in terms of at least some attempt at
I think I've
plot.
downgraded my average. I think I was giving it a 5 averaged out, but I think I've downgraded it to a 4 just because
Yeah.
even the internal consistency is kind of broken, and the
Oh, yeah. For a purist.
well, I'm trying not to do it as a purist. That's what I say. I'm not saying comparing it to Tolkien's canon. I'm saying its
Yeah.
own version of its own story and its own internal consistency.
I mean,
There seems to be
they
all
just
kinds of
had
problems.
they just had too much to cover, you know?
I baloney. They have
Okay,
5
okay.
years. They have 5 years, 50 or well, is it 8 episodes they did?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of lame, but yeah, 40 episodes.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, they introduce it to everybody. They had what, 8?
yeah, but I mean, but yeah,
But
well,
I'm looking at this in terms of what I've experienced from
sure.
other
Yeah, I found myself falling asleep.
series, multi-year series like Breaking Bad, where you know there are parts that get boring and then it gets really interesting again.
Yeah.
And Mr. Robot did the same thing.
I really liked
and
Mr. Robot.
yeah, it was a fantastic show,
Yeah.
but season 2 was a bit boring.
Mm.
And that type of thing happens. And so
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that this series might just be getting off to a little bit of a slow start.
We'll see. Fingers crossed. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
But
I'm
I
worried
like
they
what
painted
I've
themselves
seen.
into a number of corners, and so we'll see how they
Yeah.
go with it, because it creates when they deviate so heavily, it creates, it's just like what happened with Game of Thrones and stuff. It creates a ripple effect that you get more and more off course, and things start to make to just be less satisfying because they're not as well thought out.
Sure.
Yeah. You said you had 2 topics.
Well, let's see here. There's the One Rings response. A month later, there's a bunch of writers that
Yeah.
indicate that they're generally happy.
Huh. Okay.
And not as critical. So
Huh.
it seems like the fandom is after their
Settling
initial,
down.
oh, this is going to be terrible
Yeah.
reaction, that they're being a little bit more accepting of
Okay.
it on the One Ring. So that gives me a little bit of hope.
Okay.
I guess it could be summed up. I really enjoyed the series. Is it perfect? No, but they don't have as much to work with as many people seem to believe that they do. I think that they are doing a good job. I am excited to see where they go with what they have set up. I think the actors are performing well, and the costumes and sets are great.
Yeah, except for the actor playing Galadriel, I'm just not buying.
She's not.
She doesn't have the
crazy.
presence. She just doesn't have the presence. A lot of the
Yeah.
other actors are much stronger, and her presence just
Yeah.
isn't there. Maybe she'll get better, but I just don't feel the Galadriel vibe at all with her.
Yeah,
She's too.
and Elrond is, in
and
my opinion,
is
a
just
bit
weird.
too political / sleazy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah.
But a lot of the other, but yeah, I mean, just because again, it's a really great cast. The cast is strong, and unfortunately, for Galadriel, I feel like they really undercast her compared to the rest of the cast. It just really stands out. So, I'll keep slogging through it, but like the MTV Elfstones Shannara series, whatever, it took me years to finally get around to finishing watching it because it was painful. This isn't as bad as it isn't as bad as that, except for those pieces, the Mithranium wackiness, right? Those kinds of things. I'm just like, oh
yeah.
yeah.
I feel the same way about the Doctor Who
The 13th Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, and I haven't even started that.
Well, they had a good,
I've
strong
gone back.
cast.
Yeah, I've gone back to the beginning,
Okay.
and I'm up to Tom Baker.
Oh, you're going back to the beginning. Nice.
About 2/3 of the way through.
Okay.
And finding that I get bored with it, and then I have to put it down for a while, and then come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But there's a lot of richness there. There's a lot
Sure.
of backstory there, and
Sure.
and if I had watched all of that before then watching all the new stuff, I would have picked up a ton of stuff that I didn't pick up.
Oh,
the first
okay. Yeah, and
time.
see, I had
So
watched the old. I mean, I was introduced to
Right.
Doctor Who back in the '70s with Tom Baker, and then
Right, and I just haven't.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um,
I have a couple of Doctor Who style Tom Baker style scarves. Big,
Yeah.
long, oversized ones.
The second, I don't know if you covered this in a prior episode, but Forbes magazine, October 31st, said j.r.r. Tolkien was the richest dead person.
Right. Yeah. The billions made. Yeah.
The estate in 2022 by itself made 500 million.
Wow.
And number 2 is Kobe Bryant with 400 million, and number 3
Wow.
is David Bowie with 250. And
Wow.
number 4 is Elvis Presley with 110, and then it drops off from there.
Wow. Tolkien beat all those out. That's amazing.
Yes. So that is high praise.
That's interesting. And the Tolkien estate only gets a tiny fraction of the media stuff, right? The billions went to the other, New Line Cinema and all the other license holders, Saul Zaentz Company, etc. They made a lot more than that. That's interesting. That's wow.
So we're not 100% sure what the approximately 500 million is, because Embracer only disclosed that they spent 788 million on 6 acquisitions, including Tolkien. But there was some back channel that told Forbes that it was at least 500 million on Middle Earth Enterprises.
Interesting.
So, but
I'll be watching their.
If you remember, Saul Zaentz was our original list price when it said it was up for sale was $5 billion.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's obnoxious.
Ridiculous like
that is obnoxious. Wow. Any other topics?
No.
Okay, Gary?
Not really, other than, I just had one comment that
Please.
about Galadriel, and I happen to agree with you about the acting.
Well, she's too like a little waif elf, right? Elfin in the old.
Yeah, however,
rather than great presence. Yeah.
I think.
So I hope she matures.
Did a terrific job in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So,
Yes.
I wonder if there's any maybe subconscious comparing between the two. So, just my thought, like there is with Elrond.
Okay. Could be.
But yeah, this is before she matures.
Maybe. I mean that's that maybe is their premise. So hopefully over time she's able to increase her presence. I've never seen the actress in anything else, so I don't know what she's capable of in other areas. So
neither do I.
It'll be interesting to see. I hope that like many actors and shows that they grow and improve. Sometimes the first season's the weakest. Babylon 5 is my favorite sci-fi series, and the first season's a little weak. Wasn't a bad cast, but it took them a little bit to get into their groove towards the end. And they had 26 episodes a season, and but boy, second, third, and fourth season was awesome, and they were really, it was. So we'll see. Hopefully, second season will be even stronger.
I know my wife loved, because she's a sci-fi geek, loved the Babylon 5, but I never saw it.
And highly inspired by Tolkien.
Oh,
J.
really?
Michael Straczynski overtly said that he drew from many sources, but he was heavily inspired by Tolkien in doing Babylon 5.
Wow.
He does exact quotes from Tolkien. So there's a technomage in there, which is kind of like a sci-fi version of a wizard. They use tech to emulate magic. And the wizard's name is Elric. Remember we were talking about Michael Moorcock and how he's like the anti-Tolkien author a few months back?
Yeah.
That's Elric was one of his series, Stormbringer and Elric. So anyway, the technomage was named Elric. But then when one of the diplomats was trying to get an audience and stuff, he makes comment about, "Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger." And he was played by the original Klingon from the original Star Trek series. The actor who played the original Klingon from the original Star Trek series as that character. So there are Tolkien quotes in the series, and there are structural things that are intentionally inspired by Tolkien. The thing about the series is it really is a hard one to jump into the middle of. It is a 5-year arc that he wrote it as, and there's tons of foreshadowing, and there's a lot to miss, and really it takes 2 or 3 times to watch it to actually pick up on everything that's going on. So if you jump into the middle of it, it's often really hard to pick up on everything that's going on, because he avoided a lot of the episodal stuff of like Star Trek and the others intentionally. That was why it took him 8 years to get a studio to accept it, because everybody went, no, nobody wants to follow an arc. This is back in the 80s. Nobody wants to follow an arc. Everybody just wants to come home from a hard day and just unplug their minds and have a one and done and be over with, and just get it all done like Star Trek. And so he had so much trouble.
Another factor was nobody wanted to finance it unless, or pick it up because they didn't know if it was going to be successful or not.
Well, and it wasn't wildly successful. It struggled, but it did well enough. Right, it almost didn't have a 5th season, but it squeaked by. And but again, if you get through, you got to get through. The pilot and the first half of the first season is a bit rough. The acting's a bit rough. The makeup's a little rough. It's not really in its stride, the first part of it, but then it starts to get into the groove. And if you can make it to the second season, it really takes off from there. And you don't want to jump straight to the second season, or you'll miss too much.
I mean, TV shows are renewed from year to year. So.
Yeah, but it's available on HBO Go, the entire series. They recently enhanced it. And you can get the DVD set on Amazon, the complete set, or you can watch it on HBO. And it's hands down my favorite sci-fi series. There is no other sci-fi series that I feel, for me personally, it's just a personal preference, that I find as fulfilling and enjoyable out there.
Wow. I think my wife has it in DVD.
Yeah.
God, I hope it's not VHS.
I hope not. Yeah. But if you haven't watched it, give it a shot. But make sure you make it to get yourself to the second season before you give up. If it may not be a cup of tea, but most people, once they make it to that second season, get it right. This is the one of the early first bingeable arcs, right? There really wasn't anything like that before. And he proved a proof of concept that no, people do want this kind of longitudinal all kinds of foreshadowing, long arcs, rich character development over time, lots of subplots and interwoven, and lots of wheels within wheels within wheels. Right, it's the way Dune should be done. Right, the same type of just high level complexity. Very much, yeah. So it has a little bit of camp to it, not nowhere near as much as the original Battlestar Galactica, but so the nice thing is, unlike the remake of Battlestar Galactica was such a grind, this has a little bit of humor here and there, and the characters are likable, and good and evil still fairly clear. You have sometimes some moral ambiguities that are challenging, but good and evil still pretty clear. Whereas the trend lately is there is no, everything's moral relativism and there is no good and evil and all that, right? So many shows are that way now. This still has some of that without being total camp. And so yeah, if you can check it out, I definitely, it's may disagree, and that's fine, but it's my favorite. Okay, well, before we jump into reading letter 209 from A Letter to Robert Murray S.J. from 1958, I'd like to take just a very short break, and then we can jump into that. How's that sound?
Okay.
Okay, we'll be right back. Welcome back, Kata. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
That's something out of the past.
Blast from the past.
Yeah.
Forget about it. It's no big whoop. Okay. Chris, wait till Chris is back here.
Well, that is a long letter. Yeah. Yeah, it deals. It deals with Tolkien's specialty, which was, what do you say, philology? Yeah. And not with his writing.
Yep, I think so.
And we're back. Did you miss us? All right. So the next one, we're continuing with the letters of J.r.r. Tolkien. We're going to be reading letter 209. It's a long one, so I'll start out and then hand it off to each of you if you want to read some of it, because it is 3 pages long. So it's from a letter to Robert Murray, S.J., 4th of May, 1958. Murray wrote to Tolkien asking if I could pick your brains about holy words. He wanted to know Tolkien's views on the original meaning of and relationships between the various words for holy in the Indo-European languages. So this is a philology discussion rather than, Lord of the Rings discussion per se. These problems concerning the original meaning of words, or families or formally connected words, are fascinating. Strictly, that is, alluring, but not necessarily by a wholesome attraction! ! I often wonder what use, except historical knowledge or glimpses of what words have meant and how they have changed in fact so far as ascertainable, we gain by such investigations. It is practically impossible to avoid the vicious circle of discovering from word histories or supposed histories primitive meanings and associations, and then using these for tracing histories of meaning. Is it not possible to discuss the meaning now of sanctity, for instance, without reference to the history of the meaning of the word forms now employed in that meaning? The other way round seems rather like describing a place or stage in a journey in terms of the different routes by which people have arrived there, though the place has a location in existence quite independent of these routes, direct or more circuitous. In any case, in a historical inquiry, we are obliged to deal simultaneously with two variables, each in motions that are independent fundamentally, even when affecting one another accidentally. The meanings and associations of meaning are one, and the word forms another, and their changes are independent. The word form can go through a whole cycle of change until it is phonetically unrecognizable without measurable change of meaning. And at any moment, without any change in phonetics, the meaning of a word may change. Quite suddenly, as far as the evidence goes, yelp, which meant to speak proudly, and was especially used of proud vows, such as a knight vowing to do some dangerous deed, stopped meaning that and became used of the noise of foxes or dogs. This is soon after AD 1400 is the note. Why? At any rate, not because of any change in ideas about vaunts or animals. It is a long way from, oh man, I cannot read that. I don't even know how to pronounce that at all. O with an apostrophe over it, the German type B-O, V-T, to tooth. So from whatever that is, to tooth. But the changes of form have not much affected the meaning, nor has tine, the equivalent of dent, moved very far. Footnote here. But even so, we do not know the original meaning of tooth. Did it mean spike, sharp point, or was it, as some guess, really the participle agent to ed, eat, a functional and non-pictorial name? Question mark. We do not know the original meaning of any word, still less the meaning of its basic element, such as the part it shares with or seems to share with other related words, once called its root. There is always a lost past. Thus, we do not know the original meaning of Beos, or I don't even, again, funky characters here, or Deus, or God. We can, of course, make some guesses about the formation of these three quite distinct words, and then try to generalize a basic meaning from the senses shown by their relatives. But I do not think we shall necessarily, by that way, get any nearer to the idea God at any actual moment in any language using one of these words. It is an odd fact that English dizzy, olim disig, and giddy from olim Giddig, or Geidig, seems related to Beos and God respectively. In English, they once meant irrational, and now vertiginous. But that does not help much, except to cause us to reflect that there was a long past before Deus or God reached their forms or senses, and equally queer changes may have gone on in unrecorded ages. We may, of course, guess that we have a remote effect of primitive ideas of inspiration to the 18th century. An enthusiast was much what an Anglo-Saxon would have called a disiga. But that is not of much theological use. We are faced by endless, minute parallels to the mystery of incarnation. Is not the idea of God ultimately independent of the ways by which a word for it has come to be? Footnote. He's got a bunch of them here. Because a single word in human language, unlike Entish, is a shorthand sign and conventional. The fact that it is derived from a single facet, even if proved, does not prove the other facets were not equally present to the mind of the users of this conventional sign. The aios is ultimately independent of the verbum. Now he's using square roots and stuff. Whether through square root dh parentheses e close parentheses ws, which seems to refer basically to stirring and excitement, or square root d parentheses e close parentheses jw, which seems to refer basically to brightness, especially of the sky, or possibly, it is a mere guess, square root ghew cry, God is originally neuter and is supposed to mean that which is invoked, an odd past participle, possibly a taboo word. The old Deus word, which produced divus, deus, survives only in Tuesday. Footnote. But we do not know how TIW equals divus became a name equated in the interpretation the Interpretatio Romana with Mars, perhaps another substitution of a general term divinity for a true name. The plural tivar in Old Norse verse still means gods. All right, who'd like to continue from there if he has to tackle?
I guess we shouldn't all speak up at once. I will.
If you'd rather I keep reading, I will. If you don't.
Well, you do it with so much emphasis that I'm kind of jealous. But anyway, if he has to tackle such a word as holy, the old-fashioned philologist, such as I am, looks first at the history of the form. According to rules laboriously elaborated, I think certainly valid within limits, and that footnote is, they refer to undisturbed norms of habitual change, like simple statements of the action of frost. But the norms may be interfered with. The patterns on a given window are practically unpredictable, though one believes that if one knew all the circumstances, it would not be so. Okay? Anyway, where was I?
I think certainly valid within limits.
He won't say what it is probably formally related to, but he cannot wholly escape the quicksand of semantics. Before he proposes a relationship that is in an actual historical nexus of change between wholly and other words in the same language, or in other believed to be related to English, he will want both a phonologically possible kinship and some possible kinship in a sense. All the time he will be uneasily aware of two things found in linguistic experience. Number one, that there seems always to have been homophones, or two or more, phonetically indistinguishable elements that possess distinct senses and are therefore different words. And here's another footnote, by which he means that they are not connected by loss, semantic change, but how can he be sure of that? Okay. Like Indo-European stems, men stick out and men think. And that semantic change is sometimes violent, and in the dark past may have operated without leaving evidence of its occurrence. For instance, the formal equivalence of
yeah, I did square root and then just spelled out the letters.
sequel in Greek.
Oh man. And those are Greek characters. That's Greek to me. That's
or Latin sequor, another language meaning follow, is exact with Germanic sec, stem of a verb, but this means to see, which is to have most weight, the form or the sense. He cannot decide finally on the evidence. So fiddling in an amateur way with semantics, he can make the sense jump seem less impossible than it looks at first. By referring to the uses of follow, which I guess means understand, and to the fact that Indo-European words for see is indeed our sea, I guess that means the Holy See. I have no idea.
it wasn't capital. It's not capitalized. So
They mean know or understand. Okay, I was wrong.
yeah.
This is particularly true of the with base. Latin video has its exact equivalent in Old English, Wiccian, watch or guard. but Oloa equals vidi in Latin. In Old English, white or what, I know, okay? Veni, vidi,
Veni Vidi Vici.
yeah. But probably, if he finds Germanic salvo, or sallow, in Latin salvus, he will decide that there is no bridge between the dirty yellow and safe and sound, so that either something is wrong with the phonological equation, or that he is dealing with homophones. There is always the possibility that either the sallow or salvus did not descend from a common antiquity. Words can be invented or borrowed and may closely resemble older words in either case. The formal equivalent, the only known one, of our harp is Latin corbus. The Romance, arpa, etc., are borrowed from Germanic, but the poor philologist will have to call on some archaeological expert before he can decide whether any relationship between harps and baskets is possible. Supposedly, GMC, harp Germanic harpo always meant harp, or corbias always meant wicker basket. Corbita means a fat-bellied ship.
Whew! That was one of the harder letters we've had.
Good God.
That's a hard one to read aloud.
Basically, he just says that, we have no idea how long
Yeah. Yeah, he just basically never answered.
Yeah.
It's an unanswerable question.
Especially in English. It might be answerable in other languages. My experience learning Japanese is a bit like what he's describing here. The phonologically possible or kinship concept. So you have your sets of kanji, but then you get into your Chinese characters.
Yeah,
and there's something
katakana and all that, yeah.
207 basic kanji.
Yeah.
And once you've learned the concept or the framework from which all of those kanji are kind of what they represent, then when you go build in complex kanji, which are 2 or 8 or 9 different items within that, you can actually visually read the concept of the word without even saying the word.
Right. Yeah, it's totally visual. Yeah, I studied both Japanese and Cantonese and Mandarin at different times, as well as the characters, and of course, pinyin and such, and then into the actual traditional Chinese and such, and right, it's tens of thousands of characters, but you learn the 7 strokes.
In Japanese high school, Chris, as you know, to graduate, you have to know, 3,000 characters?
Yeah. And I was probably in the about 1,000 category.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah, because I had 3 years in college. But kind of this phonologically possible kinship concept applies, but it doesn't always apply.
Right. We got like mama, 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 mama.
Right.
Yeah. In North Vietnamese, ma can mean one of 6 things depending on the tone.
Yeah. Well, it's a joke because I think if you say like mama, 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 right, because you have the 4 tones, it was something like my mother works like a mule or something like, I can't remember now. I have to go look it up, but because one of them, mama, I think one of them is actually like mother, But then the others like mule and it's because of the inflection, right? It was just a perfect example of the tonal issues added to it. But
Yeah,
some of that might just be because you do see commonalities there because of the palate development of babies,
yeah.
right? Baba for dad and stuff like that. But
Yeah, one of the things that I found interesting in the Far East, I was, well, a bunch of things. Number one, speaking of Chinese characters, I was very thankful that in the, I think, 16th century, a Portuguese priest Romanized the Vietnamese language, so I didn't have to deal with that.
Although the Chinese pinyin is,
Yeah, when the
they're
Air
50
Force,
pinyin
yeah, when the Air
characters.
Force sent me to language school. But there
Yeah.
are commonalities, and I'm thinking because there's fewer sources. Like, I lived a long time in Japan or in Okinawa, and there were commonalities in all the languages like doke. Doke means poison. And it means the same thing in Japanese. It means the same thing in Korean, although Korean is an Altaic language. Chinese, Vietnamese. So, what they drew upon is not so, I think, as complex as what goes into English, and which is basically.
Well, because because English has the Germanic, the Latin, the Arabic, all those very different.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And then you go back. It's like after the Germanic tribes basically overthrew the Western, overthrew Rome, and Constantinople was the only one left, was the seat of the Roman Empire, what was left of the Roman Empire.
Been a long time gone.
The tribal leaders became Romanized because the culture was so much more superior to theirs. So what words do they adopt, and it really gets, and before that even, so you got Greek, Roman, who knows, Sumerian, go all the way back.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Chris?
What was my thought? Of course, he goes on at length about original meanings of words, and we have to deal with that. We have, quote, we have Supreme Court justices that are originalists versus contemporary, and there is that battle of
spirit versus the letter.
Yeah, and is something like a document like the Constitution a
living right,
living document,
right,
or not?
Yeah.
And I think he's getting at some of those issues, and of course, even writing out God was anathema for
right,
those in the Old Testament, and almost anathema for those good Calvinists too.
Yeah, and still, for in Islam, portrayal of Muhammad and all that, right? They're still, yep.
Well, observant Jews still write God as
Yahweh.
capital G underline D.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah, my grandfather used to do that as a lapsed Jew as well. So yes.
Chris, do you want to read? Boy, is this another long one? Oh, it's even longer. Whoa, wait a minute.
I think maybe that's just too bad. Oh my God.
Oh, that's a really long one. It's got
numeric. There's a whole.
That helps. That helps. It's numeric because we can rotate.
Yeah.
So you want to start 210 and then
Yes.
Take it to
From a letter
number
to
2.
Boris J. Ackerman, not dated supposedly June 1958. Tolkien's first comments on the film treatment of the Lord of the Rings. I have at last finished my commentary on the storyline. Its length and detail will, I hope, give evidence of my interest in the matter. Some, at least, of these things that I have said or suggested may be acceptable, even useful, or at least interesting. The commentary goes along page by page according to the copy of Mr. Zimmerman's work. I wonder who Mr. Zimmerman is.
Did we meet him before in one of these letters?
Which was left with me and which I now return. I earnestly hope that someone will take the trouble to read it. If Z and or others do so, they may be irritated or aggrieved by the tone of many of my criticisms. If so, I am sorry, though not surprised. But I would ask them to make an effort of imagination sufficient to understand the irritation, and on occasion the resentment of the author, who finds increasingly as he proceeds his work treated as if it would seem carelessly in general, in places recklessly, and with no evident signs of any appreciation of what that is all about. The canons of narrative in any medium cannot be wholly different, and the failure of poor films is often precisely in exaggeration and in the intrusion of unwarranted matter owing to not perceiving where the core of the original lies.
So here's I'm going to interject. Z is this was just letter 207. Negotiations were proceeding for the American Film Company. The synopsis of the proposed film of The Lord of the Rings was the work of Morton Grady Zimmerman. That's who they're referencing.
Okay.
Keep going. Z.
Z has intruded a fairy castle and a great many eagles, not to mention incantations, blue lights, irrelevant magic, and such as floating body of Faramir. He has cut the parts of the story upon which its characteristic and peculiar tone principally depends, showing the preference for
Fights.
and fights, yeah. And he has made serious attempt to represent
No serious.
no serious attempt to represent the heart of the tale adequately, the journey of the ring bearers. The last and most important part of this has, and it is not too strong a word, simply been murdered. Some extracts from Tolkien's lengthy commentary on the storyline. Oh, this is
Just excerpts. This is pages and pages, and it's just a short excerpt.
This is the abridged version.
Don't mince words, Bones. Tell us how you really feel.
Z is used in abbreviation for the writer of the synopsis. References to this are by page. Oh my. So like
Yeah, these are page numbers.
wow. 30-page essay on your own screen.
That's his comments.
Yes. Page 2. Why should the firework display include flags and hobbits? They are not in the book. Flags of what? I prefer my own choice of fireworks. Gandalf, please, should not splutter. Though he may seem testy at times, he has a sense of humor and adopts a somewhat
Avuncular.
Attitude towards hobbits. He is a person of high and noble authority and great dignity. The description on page 239 should never be forgotten.
So on page 239, yeah, first volume, yeah, cool. Gary, do you want to? Or I guess it's my turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4. Here we meet the first intrusion of the Eagles. I think they are a major mistake of Z and without warrant. The Eagles are a dangerous machine. I've used them sparingly, and that is the absolute limit of their credibility or usefulness. The alighting of a great eagle of the Misty Mountains in the Shire is absurd, and it also makes the latter capture of Gandalf, by Saruman incredible and spoils the account of his escape. One of Z's chief faults is his tendency to anticipate scenes or devices used later, thereby flattening the tale out. Radagast is not an eagle name, but a wizard's name. Several eagle names are supplied in the book. These points are to me important. Here I may say that I fail to see why the time scheme should be deliberately contracted. It is already rather packed in the original, the main action occurring between September 22nd and March 25th of the following year. The many impossibilities and absurdities which further hurrying produces might, I suppose, be unobserved by an uncritical viewer, but I do not see why they should be unnecessarily introduced. Time must naturally be left vaguer in a picture than in a book, but I cannot see why definite time statements, contrary to the book and to probability, should be made. ... Seasons are carefully regarded in the original. They are pictorial and should be, and easily could be, made the main means by which the artists indicate time passage. That's what they did in the rotoscoped Lord of the Rings. 33 or 16 years passed lazily in the Shire, and they showed the seasons cycling through, boom, 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 in there. The main action begins in autumn and passes through winter to a brilliant spring. This is basic to the purport and the tone of the tale. The contraction of time and space in Z destroys that. His arrangements would, for instance, land us in a snowstorm while summer was still in. The Lord of the Rings may be a fairy story, but it takes place in the northern hemisphere of this earth. Miles are miles, days are days, and weather is weather.
Especially in England.
Contraction of this kind is not the same thing as the necessary reduction or selection of the scenes and events that are to be visually represented. Number 7, page 7. The first paragraph misrepresents Tom Bombadil. Ooh. He is not the owner of the woods, and he would never make any such threat. Old scamp, in quotes. This is a good example of the general tendency that I find in Z to reduce and lower the tone towards that of a more childish fairy tale. The expression does not agree with the tone of Bombadil's later talk, and though that is cut, there's no need for its indications to be disregarded. I'm sorry, but I think the manner of the introduction of Goldberry is silly and on a par with Old Scamp. It also has no warrant in my tale. We are not in a fairyland, but in real riverlands in autumn. Goldberry represents the actual seasonal changes in such lands. Personally, I think she had far better disappear than make a meaningless appearance. That's an important statement right there, though, about Goldberry. Represents actual seasonal changes in such lands. Page 8, line 24. The landlord does not ask Frodo to, quote-unquote, register. There's a footnote number 2 to that. Why should he? There are no police and no government. Neither do I make him number his rooms. If details are to be added to an already crowded picture, they should at least fit the world described. Let's see where the footnote is on that. It must be in the back of the... because it's not on that page. Where's the... Okay. It must be in the back of the book. Number 9, leaving the inn at night and running off into the dark is an impossible solution of the difficulties of presentation here, which I can see. It is the last thing that Aragorn would have done. It is based on a misconception of the Black Riders throughout, which I beg Z to reconsider. Their perils almost entirely due to the unreasoning fear which they inspire like ghosts. They have no great physical power against the fearless, but they do have, and the fear that they inspire is enormously, what they do have, excuse me, but what they have and the fear that they inspire is enormously increased in darkness. The Witch King, their leader, is more powerful in all ways than the others, but he must not yet be raised to the stature of Volume 3. There, put in command by Sauron, he is given an added demonic force. But even in the Battle of the Pelennor, the darkness had only just broken. See Volume 3, page 114, and then there's a footnote of 3. Those are some interesting insights, in his descriptions about those characters. 10. Rivendell was not a shimmering forest. That is an unhappy anticipation of Lorien, which it in no way resembled. It could not be seen from Weathertop. It was 200 miles away and hidden in a ravine. I can see no pictorial or story-making gain in needlessly contracting the geography. Strider does not, quote, whip out a sword, end quote, in the book. Naturally not. His sword was broken. Its elvish light is another false anticipation of the reforged Anduril. Anticipation is one of Z's chief faults. Why then make him do so here, in a contest that was explicitly not fought with weapons? Ah, interesting. And Peter Jackson did do that with the Weathertop scene, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. He did.
Interesting. Gary, do you want to take over with page 11?
Okay. 11. Aragorn did not sing the song of Gilgalad. Naturally, it was quite inappropriate since it told of the defeat of the Elven King by the enemy. The Black Riders do not scream, but keep a more terrifying silence. Aragorn does not blanch. The riders draw slowly in on foot in darkness and do not spur. There is no fight. Sam does not sink his blade into the ringwraith's thigh, nor does his thrust save Frodo's life. If he had, the result would have been much the same as in Volume 3, pages 117 to 120. The wraith would have fallen down and the sword would have been destroyed. Why has my account been entirely rewritten here with disregard for the rest of the tale? I can see that there are certain difficulties in representing a dark scene, but they are not insuperable, which I guess is insurmountable. A scene of gloom lit by a small red fire, with a race slowly approaching as darker shadows, until the moment when Frodo puts on the ring and the king steps forward revealed, would seem to be far more impressive than yet one more scene of screams and rather meaningless slashings. I'm on this passage as an example of what I find too frequent to give me pleasure or satisfaction. Deliberate altercation of the story in fact and significance without any practical or artistic object that I can see, and of the flattering effect that a simulation of one incident to another must have.
Flattening effect. Before you go on to 15,
effect that a simulation of one incident to another must have. Okay.
Yeah. So before you go on to 15, very notable about the Black Riders do not scream but keep a more terrifying silence. Another thing that Peter Jackson did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're all the time.
Yeah. And yet, Frodo puts on the ring and the king steps forward revealed. Seems to have been something that did happen.
Yes, that part does. That part fit. But that's very notable about the screams because that was a Peter Jackson thing constantly.
Yeah.
Right, all throughout, and that was very interesting. Very different style there.
Yeah, just Jackson's sense of horror versus
Yeah,
other sense of
exactly.
horror.
That's what worried me about Jackson in his horror film background with Dead Alive.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Tolkien is discussing, the Zimmerman's work, which was a cartoon, right?
Was it a cartoon? I mean, we know it's the storyline. Let's see. Let me go back to that.
Because otherwise, I don't see how they, with the technology of the time could, really do it justice.
Negotiations are proceeding with the American Film Company. The synopsis, and it's American with capital A, of the proposed film The Lord of the Rings, which was the work of Morton Grady Zimmerman. Okay, a copy of the storyline, which I'll go through again. I'm entirely ignorant of the process of producing an animated picture from a book. Okay,
Yeah,
the
that's
jargon
what I
connected.
thought.
Okay, yeah, so
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it was an animated film they're talking about. Okay.
Okay. Number 15, time is again contracted and hurried, with the effect of reducing the importance of the quest. Gandalf does not say they will leave as soon as they can pack. 2 months elapse. There is no need to say anything with a time purport.
And that's what Jackson did too. Jackson did
I
the
can see
same.
why he did it, Yeah. I've got the extended version. It's over 3 hours long. The lapse of time should be indicated, if by no more than the change to winter in the scenery.
Yeah, you don't have to make the movie longer. You can just do the narrative interjection. Again, that's what they did with the rotoscoped one. They said, what was it, 16 years, 11 years, I forget what it was, past Lazely in the Shire from when Gandalf left, and such. And that's all it took. It was all of 5 seconds to do the time compression, but at least it accounted for the time, as opposed to get your stuff and go now, right? It's very, very different. Without
At the bottom of the page, the eagles are again introduced. I feel this to be a wholly unacceptable tampering with the tale. 9 walkers, and they immediately go up in the air. The intrusion achieved nothing but incredibility, and the stalling of the device of the eagles when at last they are really needed. It is well within the powers of pictures to suggest, relatively briefly, a long and arduous journey in secrecy on foot with the 3 ominous mountains getting near. Zimmerman does not seem much interested in seasons or scenery, though from what I saw, I should say that in the representation of these, the chief virtue and attraction of the film is likely to be found. But would Z think that he had improved the effect of the film, say the ascent of Everest, by introducing helicopters to take the climbers halfway up in defiance of probability? It would be far better to cut the snowstorm and the wolves than to make a farce of the arduous journey. So,
and that I just put a link in the chat there. That makes me think of that animated, how the Lord of the Rings should have ended, right? And they hurry and get some eagles, and they fly over Mordor, and they drop the ring into the volcano, and Gollum jumps out of nowhere and dives to grab the ring and falls in, and then they're flying away on the eagles. They're like, oh, that was easy. Like, yeah, imagine if we'd walked. And then Boromir's character says, yeah, one of us might have died. Have you seen that before? The animated how the Lord of the Rings should have ended?
I never saw it. Maybe Chris.
I just put a link for you in the chat there. It's only 2 minutes long.
Okay.
On YouTube. So worth watching, because it's exactly this thing. Like, you just bring the eagles in and you just flatten the whole story, and it's like, well, that was easy. That's what he keeps bringing up. Okay. Chris,
number 19.
or you want to have Chris take over now?
Okay, Chris, you're
Rotate.
more than welcome.
Okay, 19. Why does Z put beaks and feathers on Earth? So, that's a bit, okay. And this is 1958. So
Yes.
It's plain to see, and it's like, why? Why is this in Why is this still being perpetuated in the Rings of Power?
Yeah, yeah.
The orcs are definitely stated to be corruptions of the human form seen in elves and men. They are, or were, squat, broad, flat-nosed, sallow-skinned, wide mouths, and slant eyes, in fact, degraded and repulsive versions of the, to Europeans, least lovely Mongol types. 20. The Balrog never speaks or makes any vocal sound at all. Above all, he does not laugh or sneer. Z may think that he knows more about Balrogs than I do, but you cannot expect me to agree with him. 21. FF. A splendid sight. It is the home of Galadriel, an elven queen. She is not, in fact, one. Delicate spires and tiny minarets of elven color are cleverly woven into a beautifully designed castle. I think this deplorable in itself, and in places impertinent.
Impertinent. Woo-hoo.
Will Z please pay me my text some respect, at least in descriptions that are obviously central to the general tone and style of the book. I will in no circumstances accept this treatment of Lori, even if he personally prefers tiny fairies and the gimmick of conventional modern day fairy tales.
Wow.
Disappearance of temptation of Galadriel is significant, particularly everything having moral import has vanished.
Wow.
So, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think Jackson's treatment of Lorien was,
It's way better than that.
yeah, earthen, a big tree to live in, etc. Lembas, 22, Lembas whey bread is called a food concentrate. As I have shown, I dislike strongly any pulling my tail towards the style and feature of contes de fées or French fairy stories. I dislike equally any pull towards the scientification of which this expression is an example. Both modes are alien to my story. Hear, hear. We are not exploring the moon or any other more improbable region. No analysis in any laboratory would discover chemical properties of lembas that make it superior to any other cakes of wheat meal. I only comment on the expression here as an indication of attitude. It is no doubt casual, and nothing of this kind or style will, I hope, escape into the actual dialogue. In the book, Lembas has two functions. It is a machine or device for making credible the long marches with little provision in a world in which I have said miles are miles. But that is relatively unimportant. It also has a much larger significance, of which one might hesitatingly call a religious kind. This becomes later apparent, especially in the chapter Mount Doom, book 3, page 215, and subsequently. I cannot find that Z has made any particular use of Lembas even as a device, and the whole of Mount Doom has disappeared into the distorted confusion that Z has made the ending. As far as I can see, Lembas might as well disappear altogether. I do earnestly hope that the assignment of actual speeches to the characters, they will be represented as I have presented them in style and sentiment. I should resent perversion of characters, and do resent it. And so far, it appears that in this sketch, even more than the spoiling of the plot and scenery.
Whew. Parts 2 and 3. I have spent much space on criticizing even details in part 1. It has been easier because part 1 in general respects the line of narrative in the book and retains some of its original coherence. Part 2 exemplifies all the faults of part 1, but it is far more unsatisfactory, and still more so part 3 in more serious respects. It almost seems as if Z, having spent much time and work on part 1, now found himself short not only of space, but of patience to deal with the 2 more difficult volumes in which the action becomes more fast and complicated. He has, in any case, elected to treat them in a way that produces a confusion that mounts at last almost to a delirium. Oh, man. The narrative now divides into 2 main branches. 1, prime action, the ring bearers. 2, subsidiary action, the rest of the company, leading to the heroic matter. It is essential that these 2 branches should each be treated in coherent sequence, both to render them intelligible as a story and because they are totally different in tone and scenery. Jumbling them together entirely destroys these things. Page 31. I deeply regret this handling of the Treebeard chapter, whether necessary or not. I have already suspected Z of not being interested in trees. Unfortunately, since the story is so largely concerned with them, But surely, what we have here is in any case a quite unintelligible glimpse. What are Ents? 31 to 32. We pass now to a dwelling of men in an heroic age. Z does not seem to appreciate this. I hope the artists do. But he and they have really only to follow what is said and not alter it to suit their fancy out of place. In such a time, private chambers played no part. Theoden probably had none, unless he had a sleeping bower or in a separate small outhouse. He received guests or emissaries seated on the dais in his royal hall. This is quite clear in the book, and the scene should be much more effective to illustrate. 31 to 32. Why do not Theoden and Gandalf go into the open before the doors, as I have told? Though I have somewhat enriched the culture of the heroic Rohirrim, it did not run to glass windows that could be thrown open! ! We might be in a hotel! The east windows of the hall, Volume 2, 116, 119, footnote 6, were slits under the eaves unglazed. Even if the king of such a people had a bower, it could not become a beehive of bustling activity! The bustle takes place outside and in the town. What is showable of it should occur on the wide pavement before the great doors. 33. I am afraid that I do not find the glimpse of the defense of the Hornburg. This would be a better title, since Helm's Deep, the ravine behind, is not shown entirely satisfactory. It would, I guess, be a fairly meaningless scene in a picture stuck in this way. Actually, I myself should be inclined to cut it right out, if it cannot be made more coherent and a more significant part of the story. If both the Ents and the Hornburg cannot be treated at sufficient length to make sense, then one should go. It should be the Hornburg, which is incidental to the main story. And there would be this additional gain that we are going to have a big battle, of which as much should be made as possible, but battles tend to be too similar. The big one would gain by having no competitor. 34. Why on earth should Z say that the hobbits were, quote, were munching ridiculously long sandwiches, end quote? A little Subway product placement before Subway existed. Ridiculous indeed. I do not see how any author could be expected to be pleased by such silly alterations. One hobbit was sleeping, the other smoking. The spiritual staircase weaving around the tower, spiral staircase, weaving around the tower Orthanc comes from Z's fancy, not my tale. I prefer the latter. The tower was 500 feet high, so 50 stories. There was a flight of 27 steps leading to the great door, above which was a window and a balcony. Z is altogether fond of the word hypnosis and hypnotic. Neither genuine hypnosis nor scientifictitious variants occur in my tale. Saruman's voice was not hypnotic, but persuasive. Those who listened to him were not in danger of falling into a trance, but of agreeing with his arguments while fully awake. It was always open to one to reject by free will and reason both his voice while speaking and its after impressions. Saruman corrupted the reasoning powers. Z has cut out the end of the book, including Saruman's proper death. In that case, I can see no good reason for making him die. Saruman would never have committed suicide. To cling to life to its basest dregs is the way of the sort of person he had become. If Z wants Saruman tidied up, I cannot see why, where so many threads are left loose. Gandalf should say something to this effect as Saruman collapses under the excommunication. Quote, "Since you will not come out and aid us, here in Orthanc you shall stay till you rot, Saruman. Let the Ents look to it." Now, isn't that what Jackson did because they didn't do the Raising the Shire with Sharky and all of that? Isn't that what they ended up doing?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's exactly what he did.
Yep. Part 3 is totally unacceptable to me as a whole and in detail. If it is meant as notes only for a section of something like the pictorial length of 1 and 2, then in the filling out it must be brought into relation with the book, and its gross alterations of that corrected. If it is meant to represent only a kind of short finale, then all I can say is, The Lord of the Rings cannot be garbled like that. Whew! Wow! Ho, ho, ho! But that was useful insights about what Tolkien really wanted, right, in the visualization of the books. I think there's some really good insights there about what not to do, which unfortunately Jackson did do.
Well, some of it he did.
Some of it, yeah. Some of it he listened to and some of it he ignored. That was very interesting. That was a very insightful letter. I'd love to see the full version of his feedback, the whole 36 pages or whatever, 40 pages. What's that, Chris? You're muted. You're muted, Chris.
It would be interesting to see whether that actually existed.
Yeah, I'd love to see the full version of that and compare it to the other, the Bakshi and other films and Jackson films and all of those, where Tolkien has actually spoken about what he would expect to see on film. I think that's a perfect guide.
Or someone, here is some nice fan fiction. Go through The Lord of the Rings as Mystery Science Theater 3000 style with Tolkien the Professor and his friend Lewis and David.
Indeed.
That would be some good fan fiction right
Yes, yes it would. Or just the whole Inklings.
Yeah.
Gary, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting. Peter Jackson made changes to what Tolkien originally wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And
Including some that...
I'm sure he had these letters, Tolkien's letters available, but he did it anyway because of his concept of what makes, good cinematography versus, the time crunch he had, because you're talking, what did Tolkien say, from September to March is when primarily the activity takes place?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it seems that in most cases, I can understand where Tolkien's coming from, but I'm not sure he understands movies. But he also doesn't understand people who make movies and how they, believe that their interpretations are actually.
Well, it's one. I mean, I get with the cutting and truncating stuff, but the stuff where you completely change and make up stuff that is already described otherwise.
That was Zimmerman, and what he did was outrageous.
Well, Jackson did it too. I mean, Frodo offering the ring to the ring wraith in Osgiliath was just what? That's so broken. It's so broken.
It was done to show you how corrupt the ring had made him.
Yeah, but it really broke
potential of the ring.
Yeah, but it really broke the whole thing badly. Okay, so that was some interesting insights. It was really great. I really love if it's possible to get their hands on that full. That would be the thing to use for whoever makes the next Tolkien movie in some distant future, to try to break away from the Peter Jackson model and try to get closer to the Tolkien model of, I would love, I had written a number of, screenplay is too strong a word, but scripts for a community created version of the Silmarillion in the style of the old BBC low budget, like Robin Hood productions and stuff, right? Where the content was true to the source material, but had to be done in a low budget way. So it wasn't an emphasis on big battles and, special effects. It was a focus on the characters and the story and the plot and all of that. And that was the way I would love to see. I see the Silmarillion as some great material for a lot of short story anthologies in the setting of those ages. I hope someday, the problem is they keep extending copyright, and we may never see, right? A lot of people argue we will never see public domain material ever again because they keep pushing copyright longer and longer after the author's death because of Mickey Mouse, etc. But I hope someday that there will be a more direct connection between the author's vision and what's put on screen someday. May not live to see it.
I think it's going to be a long time coming.
Yeah, well, they keep extending the copyright laws, so they keep doubling them. It's like, come on. So, yeah. Well, that's our time then. Is there any last things you want to add, Chris? Gary?
Yeah, we're meeting again in December, which is, just a big
It's going to fall on the 17th, Saturday,
17th?
December 17th.
Okay, I'll put that on my calendar.
Yeah. That'd be great.
And hopefully Brian and Anthony can find us. And
I hope so. I hope they can make it.
Maybe some of the others too.
Yeah, that'd be great. So everybody, we'll be back here on youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars for the live stream December 17th, 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time right here. You can check out our website at tolkienscholars.org for the last 16 years of meeting notes and special guests and published authors and video recordings, etc. through our YouTube channel. We are an official Smial of the UK Tolkien Society, and we're based here in Spokane, Washington, but we have members all around the world participating in these meetings, sometimes as far away as Italy, which is wonderful for members of other Tolkien Society Smiles. We love it when they're able to participate in UK, Finland, Italy, etc. And so that's it. We're also on Twitter at twitter.com/Tolkien Scholars. We'll see how that shakes out with what's going on right now on Twitter. We'll see how that goes. We're not active on Facebook. We had too many shenanigans with Facebook's. Every time we'd get up around 5,000 followers, Facebook would do something to kill off our account. And it's been killed off 3 times every time we've gotten up around 5,000 followers. and it's just such a pain in the rear. So we abandoned Facebook years ago because it just was too much headache to deal with. So we stuck with Twitter, and then of course our own website and YouTube, and it is what it is. So, but we'll hope you will join us if you're in the Greater Inland Empire area of the Northwest USA. Do feel free to swing by. We have these meetings at the RPG Community Center right here in 101 North Stone Street in Spokane, Washington. It is open to the public. In addition to the Tolkien Society meetings here each month, we also have role-playing games and other activities that people can drop in and participate in on Fridays and Saturdays at multiple locations, but especially this location. And wherever you may be well, and Namarie.
Namaria.